as long as you're very transparent about the efforts you're making, not trying to convince your consumers that you're changing the world one product at a time, just being very, very authentic and sharing with them very tangible efforts that you're making, probably you will be rewarded by their fidelity.
This week, we are brought to you by Attest. Attest is a consumer research platform that enables brands to make customer understanding a competitive advantage with continuous insights. By combining unparalleled speed and data quality with on-demand research guidance, the platform makes it simple and fast to uncover opportunities with consumer data and grow without guesswork. Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Ollerton. I'm the founder of Automated Creative, and this is a weekly podcast where I speak to the industry's leaders about what they think is coming next in the world of marketing. And this week is no different. I'm on a call with Charles Steinmyller, who is Senior Brand Manager, Tampax Europe at Procter & Gamble. So Charles, for anyone who doesn't know you, can you give the audience a bit of an overview of who you are and what you do?
Sure. Hi, Tom. Thanks for inviting. I'm French. I'm 29. And as you said, I work for Tampax. Quite strange for a man to work on a female brand, but very happy to design the strategy and the campaigns for Europe, for this brand across Europe. I joined especially regional for me to work on Tampax since I've been a junior officer in my early career. I was in the Navy, in the French Navy. So I moved from a very masculine environment to a very feminine world, I would say. But love the shock, love the change of environment. And still early in my career, but 4 years now in what we call femcare in P&G. Did 2 years on Always, on the social impact of the brand globally. And now I'm working on the tampon brand for Europe.
There's a big gap there. You're going to have to tell me how you got from being in the Navy to working on Always.
No big surprise on working for P&G because I studied in a business school. I got the chance to go abroad, US, Canada, Brazil, Korea, worked a bit in Germany and Switzerland too. So I was really attracted by this international environment, wanted to do my career in the business industry, let's say. So P&G was not the surprise. It's more the Navy experience that is coming out of the blue. But not so much of a surprise as well for the people who know me, because my dad did his career in the Navy. My mom's dad did it too. And I grew up in an environment where I have six siblings. We're 7 kids. So the military training at home was really here to make the organization smooth. So a shower were 2 minutes, and you had to follow these habits of being very well organized. So military environment was also something I grew up in, and I always was tempted to try 1 year in the Navy. So I went just after my degree. I joined the Navy for a year. They had this program where you can join as a volunteer. Really enjoyed it. And then, yes, I came back to a career that was more what I was prepared for.
So given where you are in your career, what advice would you give to a student who wants to follow in your footsteps or be successful?
My advice to probably young graduate is to keep exploring. I had the chance to talk to a few students in a career fair once I came back to my business school for speeches or events, and I was telling them keep exploring when you're young, especially. You'll have time to specialize later if you want to, but having this constant mindset of being curious to discover new things is something really important, I would say. Especially when you're just starting to explore the world of possibilities of a career in the business world.
And in your career, either at the Navy or at P&G, what is your top marketing tip? What's that kind of golden bit of advice you find yourself sharing most often?
Very early career, but still I have one tip that struck my mind when I was when it was shared with me, is somebody told me, be your consumer. And this is a good reminder of consumer knowledge is really the key to understand how to shape a winning strategy. from understanding that your brand is not at the center of the life of your consumer, to also making sure that you're doing the job that you're expected to do. Ideally, you do it the best, but you need to deliver on the basic promises that your brand is claiming they will answer. So being your consumer, or being in the shoes of your consumer, is really a good tip for me. I think putting the consumer knowledge at the center is very helpful.
So I can imagine there might be some specific challenges on the brand you work for now. How do you put yourself in the mind of your consumer at Tampax?
Yeah, good question. Tricky indeed. I mean, it depends on the market. And this is the beauty of working at the European level. You have the challenges for British consumer, for example, where the trend on going out of single-use plastic is big. In France, is more around safety. I come from France, so I'm being constantly reminded by my friends and family that we need to do something. So yes, it's tricky, but that's what makes it exciting. And the good thing, and this is the main reason why I joined P&G, is we have the chance to be in a big company that has the possibility to do something that can be scaled. So whenever you do the smallest effort towards the environment, or especially in this area and towards the environment, it's when you scale it to the global level of how the company is operating, you're really having a strong impact. So this is what I said would be my objective by joining P&G, is joining the big name to change it from within for a more positive future, let's say.
This episode of the Shiny New Object podcast is brought to you in partnership with Madfest. Whether it's live in London or streamed online to the global marketing community, you can always expect a distinctive and daring blend of fast-paced content, startup innovation pitches, and unconventional entertainment from Madfest events. You'll find me causing trouble on stage, recording live versions of this podcast, and sharing a beer with the nicest and most influential people in marketing. Check it out at www.madfestlondon.com.
We're going to talk now about your shiny new object, which is the circular economy. So I have an understanding of what the circular economy is, but can you help the audience understand specifically what you see as the circular economy being, and why that is your shiny new object, and why you think it represents the future of marketing?
I'm just trying to define it very simply. It's trying to turn waste into the next best thing to use, and not changing our perspective on waste. We're producing a lot, and if we manage to turn this waste into new material that can be reused indefinitely, this is the best thing we can do to try and reduce our impact on the environment. I told you I was in the Navy. I got the chance to have my open space being an ocean, so I could see it. I was at the, how do you say that, the first row of seeing the impact of our activities on the environment. I had a port of call in Djibouti in Africa, and you see that these topics are not especially top of mind for everyone, but are truly affecting everyone. And I started to meet a few companies that were working in that space. And I understood that this was the way to go, because we're most likely not going to stop consuming and producing. But if we manage to shift the mindset into, hey, let's try and make it circular so that we reuse what we produce, that's probably the best way to go. So this is, I would say, my shiny new object. And again, by joining P&G, that has the scale and the power to change things, I think it's my little contribution to help change things in that area.
So we are fortunate to have a partner in Attest, who are the sponsor partner for this podcast, and they've conducted some research for you on the topic And there's a couple of interesting points to note. That from their survey, it said that 72% of women deem sustainability in femcare products as somewhat or very important. That seems to chime with your worldview. Were you surprised it was high as that, or would you expect it to be even more positive?
I would say I expected it to be that high. I mean, it's not a surprise. This is where we need to focus our efforts. And thanks again to your partner at TEST for this data. It's very helpful. Especially another point that they mentioned was interesting to me, is they said that recycled object was was top of their list in what they deem important into how a brand could be sustainable. So for me, it just confirms the need for our brands to be very authentic, transparent, and share tangible effort that we are doing on making our product a little bit more sustainable. I think circularity really talks to people. It's really clear what we're doing when you're turning waste into new material that you're reusing. It's clear, it doesn't sound like greenwashing, and you're just making something that seems obvious and a lot of people would expect you to do. So that was helpful data to have. Good reminder that this is still a top priority for most of our consumers, and a good encouragement as well for us to keep doing what we do.
And yet, just to clarify the data point that you mentioned, so the most important factors for women when buying femcare products are that the products are chemical free, and as you mentioned, the packaging is recyclable, and the least important factor is that the product is organic. So did that surprise you?
This last point, yes. It does, especially when put in perspective with the French consumer. I remember this survey was done in the UK, so it reflects the thinking and the approach, the perspective of the UK consumer. But in France, it's the opposite. Organic is the top priority for the consumers to find. So, this just shows how complex it is for us at the European level to find a solution that fits everyone. It's complex and it's not happening. We're just launching different lines of products to ensure we answer the needs of our different consumers. But I was surprised that the British consumer doesn't really care about organic product as much as it being more sustainable.
So what's your advice to brands or marketers that want to be part of the circular economy? They want their brand to be part of that journey and that narrative. What would your advice be to someone who wants to get into that world, into that space, into that economy, but works at a brand that isn't that way inclined at the moment? The
tricky part is, and it's always the same challenge that we're facing is the cost. It's very expensive today to buy material that are coming from the circular economy. So waste turn into new material. Let's think about old plastic material. You change it, create new plastic paste, let's say, and use it in your product. And today it's very expensive. And it's sad because this is what's blocking companies to make the extra effort. So I would say my tip would be to join forces across the industry and to make the choice of a supplier that is actually using recycled products, recycled raw materials, a priority. It will take a little bit of time, but if the majority of supplier and the biggest clients ask to be supplied by more sustainable and recycled materials suppliers, this will probably change the situation.
And so help me understand it better from a marketing perspective. So if large brands, important brands, influential brands start using recycled elements of their products or their packaging, once everyone starts doing it, everyone has stopped marketing at that point. It just becomes kind of hygiene, right? So is this unfortunately a bit of a short-term win while the early movers that become, carbon neutral or carbon positive or, fully recycled, that they get their PR advantage? That it's literally a point of difference. But if everyone comes on board with your vision, then it won't be a point of difference and it will just be, a tick box.
Yeah, you always have the first mover advantage. So my tip for marketing team on that front is to be very authentic. Even though it's not a POD for you, as long as you're very transparent about the efforts you're making, not trying to convince your consumers that you're changing the world one product at a time, just being very, very authentic and sharing with them very tangible efforts that you're making, probably you will be rewarded by their fidelity when they purchase you. And then, I mean, if we come to a point where everybody is doing the same thing, there will always be another area to focus on or more efforts to be made. So I'm convinced the job is not done on sustainability and embracing circular economy today. So I'll be curious. I'll be curious to see when we reach that point. But again, my tip is really being authentic, being transparent, sharing the efforts you're making it very tangible for the consumers to understand, and that way you will be rewarded with their purchase.
And so, who do you look up to in the circular economy, in the brand space? Who do you think? I wish Tampax was a bit more like them, or I aspire to have some of their values or outputs.
I have to admit, I really like how Adidas did it. A few years ago already, when they were saying, we're going to create a running shoe made out of ocean plastic. And it's going to be 100% made out of ocean plastic. So it's a double, it's killing two birds, one stone. By cleaning the ocean, you also create your new product, and it's shiny and it's attractive and you manage to sell it. So I was really admirative of their communication strategy, which was, again, very tangible what they were doing, still staying true to who they are. This was the first start, and then I think they started selling a shoe that was fully recyclable as well. So this is a good example of embracing the circular economy. Create your shoes, you use it, then we destroy it to create a new one.
It reminds me of a campaign that we covered on another show that I do called Advertisers Watching Ads, where I think it was Corona, and they ran a fishing competition, a plastic fishing competition for some fishermen in South America. So I can't remember quite where. I hope I've got that right. And then they paid them for the amount of plastic that they could then sell to a recycling plant. So quite a lot. I thought it was quite an it's obviously quite the same thing, but it's an entertaining and sustainable and a great idea.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. We have to. Brands and marketers will have the challenge of making this topic, not taking it lightly because it's not, but making fun of it and showing that they are making efforts. But this effort don't sound like we're becoming too pretentious about it. So we have to make it. We have to be able to laugh about it, but by doing the right thing.
And so, what do you see the future of the circular economy being? What's going to make it a tip, and what's really going to make this incredibly mainstream? It sounds like to me, from a brand perspective, it's happening in places, but what's going to make it work for most brands?
Maybe by ensuring it's part of the brand strategy, not having a separate function working on it, but ensuring that it's integrated in the brand strategy, in the brand building, and not working too much in silo. This is a lot about purchasing, technical team, PS, product supply, and logistics. So once we make sure that this becomes one of the strategic objective of a brand, we probably have a stronger impact. I think this is what we should all opt for, not working in silos, but joining forces to make it a no-brainer that this needs to be part of every brand strategy.
So unfortunately, we are at the end of the podcast now. So if someone would like to reach out to you, talk to you about the circular economy or the other things we've talked about today, how would you like them to do that, and where?
I think via LinkedIn is very easy. The way you did it, very simple. And I like when people come to me with sharing a passion that we have in common, or they just see something that we did, or they're curious to know more about it. So I will often answer positively to a request if the person start being interested in talking to me, meeting me in person. So LinkedIn is a way, but nothing can replace a nice physical encounter, grabbing a coffee or a drink. This is what I prefer the most.
I think you're the first guest to ever say, buy me a drink. Fantastic. What a lovely way to finish it. Yeah, I learned a lot from that. So Charles, thank you so much for your time, and thanks to Attest for sponsoring the podcast.
Thank you, Attest, and thanks, Tom. Great opportunity.
Hi, just before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to write a review of the Shiny New Object podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever it's called these days, or whichever podcast provider you use. We're an indie podcast, so it would go a long way for us if you could just share the word and give us a bit of a support on those channels. That'd just be fantastic. If you haven't got time, that's also cool. And yeah, if you could tell your colleagues about the podcast, and also, if possible, don't forget to subscribe. And I'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to speak on the podcast or be a guest, or you think I'm asking the wrong questions, anything, I'd be super interested to hear what you think. So please email me at tom@automatedcreative.net. That's TOM at, I'm not going to bother spelling it. Anyway, you'll work it out. Thanks so much.